Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, good evening and welcome to the webinar. My name is Zoe Little and I'm a campus coordinator from North Carolina, and tonight we have our very own president of SFL, Alexander McCobin, to tell us about Millennial Libertarianism. Before we get started, I wanted to show you around the SFL website and tell you a little bit about us and what we're doing. Students for Liberty is a student-led, student-run organization that is committed to promoting the ideas of free minds and free markets all around the world. On that note, you may be aware of the situation in Ukraine and Venezuela with the protests against the government right now. Students for Liberty has people all over the world in those countries and abroad showing solidarity for the protesters there. You can keep updated on that situation on this page, and you can see some of the activism that students are doing and what is going on the front lines here. There may be an event in your area that is showing solidarity for these protesters in Ukraine and Venezuela, so keep an eye on the SFL website to learn more about that. Also, the campus coordinator applications are open currently. I cannot express enough how much this experience of being a campus coordinator has changed my life. It's really been incredible. It will give you incredible tools to be a better leader in the Liberty movement. You will receive incredible opportunities to do things that you never thought you would have been able to do, whether it's running conferences, whether it's running a webinar series, doing really amazing activism. The application is pretty quick and painless, and I urge you to apply as soon as possible. The deadline for application or the acceptance into the program is rolling, so the sooner you do it, the sooner you'll know if they want you to be a campus coordinator. Without further ado, I will tell you, well, first, before I introduce Alex, you may see on the side of your screen a little question box where you can type in questions. If you have any questions for President Alexander McCobin, at the end of the webinar, I will ask them to him if you type them in the box. Alexander is co-founder and president of Students for Liberty. Under his leadership, Students for Liberty has grown into the largest libertarian student organization in the world, which includes over 400 leaders that support over 900 student groups representing over 50,000 students. Previously, Alexander worked at the Cato Institute and ran another nonprofit organization that introduced high school debate programs to underserved youth in the greater Philadelphia area. Alexander also serves on the board of advisors of the Atlas Society and is an honorary board member of the Our America Initiative. Alexander received his BA and MA, or Bachelor's of Arts and Master's of Arts, in philosophy at the University of Pennsylvania, and is currently pursuing his PhD in philosophy at Georgetown University. Alexander, it's great to have you here tonight.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Zoe. I really appreciate it. So, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, you're coming in.
I haven't gotten any.
All right. Well, in any case, why don't I go ahead and get started. So thank you to everyone who has joined us for this webinar. I'm very excited to be talking about an issue that I think is really important and worthy of reflection amongst our generation, which is what exactly libertarianism means for our generation, or what Students for Liberty likes to call either second wave or millennial libertarianism. And the reason this is important in my mind is that there's a change taking place right now within the libertarian movement. A new generation of libertarians are developing, forming our own identity and crafting a new strategy for social change. We're a generation that strongly promotes libertarianism, but a libertarianism of a different stripe from that which was advocated throughout most of the 20th century. If Brian Doherty's tome Radicals for Capitalism documented the founding of the modern libertarian movement, then the period where the book ended, in my mind, the late 80s, early 90s, saw the birth of a new wave of libertarianism. While this second wave is a continuation of the principles developed in the 20th century, we're diverging in many ways to emphasize the positive nature of libertarianism. Now, it's important to remember that libertarianism is not new. The term is historically unique, but the ideas are the oldest in political philosophy. Fareed Zakaria has argued that the problem for contemporary libertarianism is that we have already won the major battles, ending slavery, expanding suffrage to more people, guaranteeing civil liberties, even defeating communism. What we are now arguing for is the last 5% of liberty, when we have already achieved so much over the past several centuries. If we take this point seriously, the historical legacy of libertarian thought extends long before the first proponents of the term. From the defense of democracy in ancient Greece to the Magna Carta in the United Kingdom, to the founding fathers of the United States, to the abolitionists of the 1800s, to the women's suffrage movement of the early 20th century. And so while I'm going to be explaining a divergence between a first wave of libertarianism in the 20th century and the second wave of libertarianism in the 21st, and arguing that the libertarian movement ought to embrace fundamental changes, it's important to remember that just as there was unity to the cause of liberty throughout the centuries, there is still unity in our cause as we respond to new threats to liberty and adopt new strategies for creating a freer world. Today, libertarianism is often stereotyped as either a group of extreme conservatives or kooks. Admittedly, this is a holdover from the first wave of libertarianism between the 1940s and 1990s, when the philosophy was first being developed. Yes, there were intellectual leaders like Ayn Rand, Ludwig von Mises, F.A. Hayek, Murray Rothbard, and Milton Friedman, but there were many other leaders grappling with how to interpret and apply these ideas in the real world. Because communism was enemy number one to both libertarians and conservatives, some people thought they were the same thing, and individuals like Barry Goldwater represented this unification or alliance. And because there were no libertarian institutions at the time, and seeming no prospects for the success of the libertarian movement, some people did go off the deep end and chose to rant to prove just how libertarian they were compared to others. But there were those who tried to build a libertarian movement with its own institutions as its own philosophy. Leonard Read with the Foundation for Economic Education, Ed Crane with the Cato Institute, David Nolan with the Libertarian Party, F.A. Baldy Harper with the Institute for Humane Studies, and those who founded and built up the Reason Foundation. At the birth of a new articulation of the philosophy of freedom, constrained by the lack of infrastructure and the power of our enemies, the 20th century saw the first wave of libertarianism try to figure out who it really was. But today's youth are able to carry on this libertarian tradition with new interests, new strategies, and new leaders. The second wave, or millennial libertarianism, is defined not only by two distinctly different conditions from the first wave, the threat of communism being a relic of the past so we can focus on other enemies of liberty, and the existence of libertarian institutions to incubate our ideas and activities in a way that Leonard Read and Ed Crane and others simply didn't have available, but other circumstances unique to our generation as well. A decade-long war that has defined our youth, overreach of the security state into our private lives and the curtailment of our civil liberties, bloated government spending and corporate government cronyism that is threatening our economic future, militarization of the police, mass imprisonment of nonviolent individuals, and a breakdown of social structure as a result of the war on drugs, and the failures of two presidential administrations, one Republican and one Democrat. All of this means that there's a newfound interest amongst young people in libertarianism, along with a new approach to the philosophy by the generation that's now known as millennials. And the approach that we take challenges many of the old models of politics, of organizing, and even the first wave's approach to libertarianism itself. What I mean is, we challenge the notion that people can only be libertarian if they're motivated by a particular argument, either derived from the non-aggression principle or that came from the mouth of a historical figure like Ludwig von Mises.
Me uneasy. I have no money in Bitcoin, but if you come out to our offices...
Sorry about that. We recognize that there are many reasons people defend liberty and many influences that can bring people to this philosophy. We challenge the purity test that many have tried to impose on the movement. We accept that some people who agree with us on 90% of the issues and are committed to the same principles as us are libertarian and should be our allies. And we challenge the mindset of inevitability that has dominated the movement for so long. We don't believe that the world will forever be defined by constraint and oppression. We do not believe that libertarians must forever be relegated to choosing between the left and the right to effect political change. Our generation as a whole is defined by an entrepreneurial spirit that has never been so widespread in the history of mankind. And our generation has the tools to actually make a difference in a way that few have had before. The stereotype of libertarians as dark, negative, cold, and calculating may persist in some minds, but anyone who seeks to gain even a cursory understanding of what we stand for will realize that this is far from accurate. There's a reason that Students for Liberty's color is gold. It represents the future prosperity that liberty promises to everyone. It is said that sunlight is the best disinfectant, but it is so much more. It brings color to the world at the start of the day. It's the basis upon which our energy depends and colors derive. And just as the precious metal provides a sound basis for currency, the color provides a sound image for our philosophy. Second wave libertarianism is one that stands for the freedoms of all people at all times, not simply when it is convenient or when it is in our interest to do so. Second wave libertarianism unifies the movement not by an appeal to purity tests or an agreed upon end state, but rather by a commitment to a common principle of liberty that can be defended by diverse justification and leads to meaningful policy debates. Second wave libertarianism seeks to organize libertarians with one another to dispel the idea that liberty means isolation. There's an old joke that organized libertarians is an oxymoron. But if Students for Liberty has shown anything over the past 6 years, it's that this is very much not the case. Libertarianism is about association and cooperation, far more than the use of force that statist philosophies depend upon. And most of all, second wave libertarianism is defined more by our collaboration with those who agree with us than our opposition to those that disagree with us. We seek to build the big tent of the libertarian movement and work with as many people as possible. And this means that we are not opposed to either the left or the right. The origins of today's conservatism and liberalism can both be traced back to libertarianism. Indeed, the most respectable positions of both philosophies today are those that are libertarian. Given our historical association with conservatism, it is important to make clear that there's a difference between libertarianism and conservatism. But we must also be sure to not condemn conservatism outright or conservatives who are making a serious effort to understand the libertarian philosophy. Each and every one of us must do this, and I'll be the first to say that I'm an individual who needs to improve my attitude in this regard as well. Beyond my political and philosophical views, I've had a number of personal experiences with some conservatives that have left a very bitter taste in my mouth. I remember a representative from the Leadership Institute approaching me during my senior year of undergrad about affiliating the Penn Libertarians with LI. During our lunch, she went through a laundry list of social issues, condemning everything from gay marriage to the hippies who wanted to legalize marijuana. Afterward, I thought to myself, why would I ever affiliate with an organization that disagrees with half the issues that my group believes in? Another time, during the first year of SFL's existence, I was having lunch with representatives from Young America's Foundation to see if there was an opportunity for collaboration. About halfway through the meal, one of the representatives said to me, "You know, Alexander, we see libertarianism as a fringe part of the conservative movement, but still part of conservatism, so we want to bring you guys into the fold." I was baffled that they were so dismissive of a philosophy with such a rich intellectual history and has constituted such a rapidly growing movement. But the right is changing. I see many people there recognizing libertarianism as an independent philosophy conceding to libertarians not only on economic, but also on social and foreign policy issues, and striving to do better to understand what it means to believe in limited government, not just for a few or in those areas that they care about, but for all people in all areas. And to that end, I'd like to comment on two particular cases of notoriety that I believe highlights this. Jack Hunter began his career as a conservative talk show host who would wear a Confederate flag mask and call himself the Southern Avenger. He made comments that were racist, homophobic, xenophobic, and towed the conservative line far more than the libertarian one. Over the years, he had privately distanced himself from these comments, but his public persona was still associated with them. This past summer, I condemned Jack for those comments and suggested the libertarian movement would be better to distance ourselves from him. However, Jack has done something even better for the libertarian movement. He penned an article published in Politico titled "Confessions of a Right-Wing Shock Jock," explaining the transformation in his views and publicly acknowledging the importance that libertarianism places on toleration. He did a brave thing in admitting his past mistakes and has taken on a new priority of promoting tolerance to conservatives. I have tremendous respect for him doing so and think it's important for individuals like him to speak out on this, to let people know that he does not believe what he had said before and that he has changed and that others should embrace similar changes. In another case, at last year's International Students for Liberty Conference, I criticized Glenn Beck for calling himself a libertarian and asked him to come to this year's ISFLC to talk with us if he actually had become a libertarian. Now, I must admit, I'm disappointed that while Beck was willing to call me a few nasty words on his radio show, he was not willing to engage in a conversation with me, either in public or in private, even after several overtures to him and his people. However, I must also admit that I have been pleased to hear Beck start to take more libertarian positions on those issues where we are different from conservatism ever since. Since last year's ISFLC, Beck has defended the right of individuals to consume what they want in the privacy of their own homes. He has come out against bans on same-sex marriage. In short, while I believe he still has some serious work to do, he is moving himself and his actions more into our camp, and I want to praise him for that, even if he will not show similar praise to those libertarians who have been working hard to make this a mainstream philosophy, to those who have built it up to a level of respect and recognition and are still building it up, to a point that has even made him willing to embrace it. Yet, we must also recognize that there is a long way to go with many people. At last year's ISFLC, because libertarians believe in decriminalizing marijuana and legalizing same-sex marriage, Ann Coulter called libertarians a word that had to be censored out of the Stossel show. She asked last year's students why we didn't focus on economic issues. Her blind opposition to anything that does not fit her interpretation of conservatism led her to ignore the stacks of books lying outside the room where she spoke titled "After the Welfare State." At the same time that SFL was promoting equal rights for individuals regardless of their sexuality, we were also distributing 175,000 copies of a book about the dangers of welfarism and the potential for free markets to do far more to end poverty than government programs. Let me express my point in another way. We are not opposed to the left-right paradigm. We transcend it. We have as many friends on the left as we do on the right. Now, to those who have been involved in libertarian politics for more than a few years, this may come off as leftist. After all, SFL is not condemning the left, and we do not work exclusively with the right. However, what makes us unique is not that we are left libertarian, but rather that we are simply libertarian. We embrace the commonalities left-wingers and right-wingers both have with libertarians. Our balance is what is unusual and throws many people off. Just look at the schedule for the International Students for Liberty Conference this year. Those who want to peg SFL as left-wing may cite the fact that we have panels with Oliver Stone and Jeremy Scahill on civil liberties, a speech by Tom Palmer on the dangers of war, and even a panel titled Libertarianism and the Left. Those who want to say that libertarianism is just an arm of conservatism will almost certainly point to the conference having multiple main room sessions on how libertarians can work with the right to affect politics, speeches on economic freedom, and training from the National Rifle Association. But notice that the conference did not prioritize the left or the right. We included both. That has been the key to Students for Liberty's success. And that is the key to the future success of liberty. Second wave libertarians have a unique opportunity to bridge the gaps in the political system right now. We must remain positive and enduring. Whenever we hear someone from the right say that libertarians should declare liberalism to be the enemy of freedom, we ought to respond politely but absolutely, no. That is not true. We have many allies on the left, and we will not condemn them. Similarly, we must not get so caught up in trying to build alliances with the left that we ignore our potential allies on the right. Second wave of millennial libertarianism is first and foremost a perspective, far more than a predefined utopian end that we all seek. It is one that says the more limited the government's purpose, the more likely it will do well. The less power government has, the less it can be abused by those in power. And the more personal freedom people have, both as individuals and as voluntary associations, the greater their dignity and prosperity. This means our libertarianism is one of action rather than inaction. In a political article about SFL that came out a few weeks ago, the author suggested that young people believe in big government because they think our government needs to take action and could be doing better. Now, I actually agree with this sentiment. I do think we need a government that will take action, a government that does better than it's doing now, a government that is more efficient. But do you know how we get that? By limiting government dramatically. One of the greatest dangers and failures of governments around the world has been mission creep. They have moved far beyond the original purpose of government, that purpose for which they have moral authority to be involved in, and have instead begun to serve as leviathans whose tentacles wrap themselves around every part of our lives, seeking to monopolize industry, argument, and activity.
Alexander, your volume is out. You need to turn your mute off.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep, you're coming in now.
Ankur, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming in. You're coming in now.
Ankur?
Yeah, can you hear me? You're coming in.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I'll just go back to this part. Given how corrupt and abusive government is these days, what will save us is not inaction, but strong will, perseverance, and more committed actions. The critics of libertarianism focus on the stereotypes, caricatures, and activities of our past. What they don't realize is that this fundamental change is taking place between generations. Those who want to understand the future of libertarianism should look to the activity of today's youth. And here's what they would find. This past summer, we held the first African Students for Liberty conference at the University of Ibadan in Nigeria. We had only planned for 100 attendees, but more than 350 people showed up for the conference. For almost everyone, it was a wonderful weekend that involved interesting discussions and new friendships. However, this was not the case for a group of 25 students from Ghana who had raised enough money to rent a bus and were willing to brave the more than 12-hour ride to the conference. While they successfully crossed the borders of Togo and Benin, They were held up at the entrance to Nigeria. The border guards refused to let them pass. The bribe the guards demanded was more money than the students had. So, the students slept overnight in the bus as they pleaded with the guards to enter. They waited and waited, and as the conference neared its end and they realized they wouldn't be able to make it, they also realized they didn't have enough food, water, or even money for gas to get back to Ghana. Only through a circuitous routing of emergency funds were we able to get them home safely. For these students, too, their dedication to liberty was further established that weekend, but not in the comfort of a lecture hall, but instead in the confines of a bus, living out the consequences of repressive regimes. They're now organizing a tour of universities in Ghana to bring the message of liberty to students in their own country. In other words, they are taking action. Time and time again, we see individuals deface, destroy, and oppose free speech walls that pro-liberty campus groups display at their schools. What should be a well-accepted and revered right, that of freedom of speech, finds itself regularly under attack whenever libertarian students attempt to educate people about it. In the last academic year, a professor at Sam Houston State University in Texas took a box cutter to a free speech wall to remove an insult against President Obama. And the campus police later required the students to take the wall down because it offended some people. At Carleton University in Ontario, Canada, a fellow student tore down the Carleton SFL's free speech wall and tried to publicly justify his actions on the grounds that a space for free expression would offend some people. We do not need less action. We need more action to stand up for such a basic right as freedom of speech. As SFL's friend and St. Lawrence University professor Steve Horwitz has said, the best argument for why free speech walls are necessary is that they keep getting torn down. Or lastly, consider the case of Rob Van Toynen, a student at Modesto Junior College who on Constitution Day this year was told by his university that he could not pass out copies of the U.S. Constitution. After a video of his interaction with campus police and administrators went viral, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education sued the university on his behalf. And in the past week and a half, we've learned that the schools decided to settle, awarding him a $50,000 settlement and a pledge to revise their speech codes. It was not inaction on Rob's part that led to important changes. It was his commitment to taking action. Now, there are many great advocates of liberty in our generation who have not come up through Students for Liberty's ranks. I think most notably of Zach Walls, the student at the University of Iowa, who gave what he probably thought would be an innocuous speech before the Iowa State Legislature against the proposed amendment to ban same-sex marriage, but ended up becoming the most viral YouTube political video in 2012, led to a book, a speech at the Democratic National Convention, and tremendous success for a new organization he founded, Scouts for Equality, that has been a leader in the private campaign for the Boy Scouts of America to accept LGBT members. However, more and more often these days, and each of the cases I presented before, it's been a Students for Liberty leader who has been organizing these activities to promote a freer world. I'm proud to see that the great successes of Students for Liberty's leaders, whether the North American campus coordinators, the international charter team members, Estudiantes para la Liberdade executive board members, or anything else. These have been the organizers of the activities and perseverance for liberty today. And this is how the liberty movement will grow. By having individuals take action and responsibility for promoting the cause of liberty on their campus, in their communities, and in their countries. For anyone who's listening right now, if you're looking to do more to advance the cause of liberty, to be an active leader in this second wave of libertarianism, Students for Liberty is here to help you. We're here to provide training on how to organize on campuses, provide resources to make the brand of liberty ever present in your areas, and a support network to help you through the challenges you will inevitably face. I encourage everyone to consider applying for one of Students for Liberty's leadership programs. If you're in North America, that's our Campus Coordinator program, which is accepting applications right now. If you're in Europe, it's our Local Coordinator program. Or in Africa with the Local Coordinator program we're launching, or anything else. For anyone who's interested in learning more about what this means, I encourage you to participate in next week's Students for Liberty webinar on Thursday, March 13th, where Clint Townsend, our leadership manager, is going to be presenting about the Campus Coordinator program for people to learn what the responsibilities and expectations are involved with it, how to apply, and why you should do so. I'll end with this. Liberty has come a long way over the course of human history. The first wave of libertarianism defined the philosophy in a way that no one had done beforehand. But now it's up to us, the second wave of libertarians, to take the cause of liberty to grander heights with greater clarity and a larger base of support than ever before. This is our time, our generation's chance to build a freer future. And it's up to everyone listening right now to make that liberty a reality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexander. I'll now open the floor to questions if anyone would like to submit them. I'm sure that there are people who are just waiting to hit enter on that question box. I remember at the Campus Coordinator Retreat over the summer when I heard about the students trying to get to the Students for Liberty conference in Africa. And hearing about that, months before I applied to the Campus Coordinator program, I didn't even know that there were liberty-minded folks in like other places in the world. I had no idea of the scope of the movement. And hearing that story about those students trying to get to the conference and not being able to even cross the border into the country where it was held was so incredibly moving to me. And I'm really glad that you shared that story with us today.
One of the other things that's incredible about this second wave of libertarianism, Zoe, in my mind, is that this truly is an international movement. Right now, we have Students for Liberty leaders involved in the protests in both Venezuela and Ukraine that we're trying to provide support and protection to. We have students now contacting us from Korea and Japan who want to start the student movement for liberty there. We are organizing the regional executive boards for Africa and India and Nepal, and we already have activities largely functioning in Europe and South America. Liberty knows no borders, and we have the opportunity to unite this generation in a way that no one has been able to before, and that's incredibly exciting in my mind.
Absolutely. I've got one question in. Let's see. Raj Desai, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, recently applied to the Campus Coordinator program and has an interview this Monday. Do you have any advice for this person?
Good question, Raj. So first off, great decision in applying to the Campus Coordinator program, obviously. In terms of some advice for what to do for that, first off, I would recommend learning as much as you can about the CC program going into it. We want people to understand what the responsibilities and expectations of the program are so that they're able to perform them as well as possible. One thing we have seen is that people who know about the nuances of the program more are more likely to succeed in it, and so we're looking for that. Secondly, I would really emphasize during your interview your past successes in being an organizer. Now, don't think that means you have to show that you've been able to organize a 100-person conference already. That's not what we're looking for. Talk about anything you've done in organizing small meetings with people, perhaps a reading group, perhaps a demonstration that 5 people held on campus that you were the lead organizer for. We're really interested in seeing what people have been able to accomplish on their own so that we can determine whether we think that they have the potential to do even more with additional training and support from Students for Liberty. So the more concrete examples you can give about your past successes and also your past failures and what you've learned from them to show that you're reflective and honest about your abilities, the more likely your application is going to be to succeed.
Thank you. I hope that answered your question, Raj, and good luck with your interview. Still waiting for more questions to come in. What I haven't been as plugged in on the student activism going on around the world with SFL leaders around Ukraine and Venezuela. I know that there have been a lot of people in North Carolina who have been organizing events, but my organization on campus has been in the middle of Free Speech Week, so we've been very busy with other things. Do you have any sort of favorite examples of activism that people have been doing?
It's tough to say what would be a favorite event of what's going on in Venezuela and Ukraine right now. It's, in my mind, incredibly depressing what they're going through. They truly are facing some of the harshest conditions and repression that they are finally standing up to and challenging. In Ukraine, I was very optimistic for a while that things were looking good. The threat that Russia now poses to the independence and the reforms that the people of Ukraine want is certainly worrisome. In Venezuela, I'm even more worried because it's not an outside force that's threatening the populace, it's the government itself and the support that the Venezuelan government is receiving from other countries like Cuba and Russia and so on in order to repress the people. What I think is most noteworthy about what's going on is that the young people in both Venezuela and Ukraine are not backing down even in the face of such incredible threats and violence. We literally have fellow students in Venezuela whose lives are being threatened, whose families are being attacked on a daily basis, and they continue to stand up for these ideas because they believe in their country and they believe in the cause of freedom. We're doing everything we can to help protect them and provide the kind of support that we're able to do so for them. And one thing that everyone here can do is simply help raise awareness about what's going on. Most of the media attention is focused on Ukraine, and it is important to make sure people know about what's happening there. But make sure people also understand what's happening in Venezuela, which some of the media has covered, but not nearly to the extent that they really should, especially regarding the violence and the danger that the protesters are experiencing.
I suppose my question was more along the lines of what are some of the activism events that you've heard of that have been in solidarity of the people in Ukraine and Venezuela, not the actual situation in those countries, because it's very difficult to find a favorite thing about something really terrible.
Gotcha, that makes a lot more sense. I mean, the thing that I've found to be most heartwarming actually is perhaps one of the easiest things that people can do, which is taking photos of themselves with a sign saying that they stand in solidarity with the students in Venezuela and Ukraine. Just seeing how many people in the SFL network are putting that out there and so therefore exposing their friends, their family, and others to what's going on, linking to the articles then, does incredible things to raise awareness. And we have students all over the world doing this. We see students holding up these signs in front of Venezuelan embassies in Africa. The first group joining SFL's network from Korea has their leader holding up a sign in solidarity with them. And it's actually important to engage in online activism as much as in-person things, because this is a great way to educate people about what's going on and raise awareness, which is which should be the goal of student activism for this right now.
And to our audience members, this is something that you can do in 10 minutes and perhaps educate 100 people through your online social media networks. I've got a question from, I don't even want to try and pronounce your name. I'm so sorry.
Ian Falua. How are you doing, Ian Falua?
This person asks, they were interviewed for the CC program at ISFLC, and while they awaited a decision, is it okay to go ahead with a planned event this spring semester? It's been planned as an SFL event at this person's school.
I do not want to tell anyone to not hold events. If you have ideas for what you want to do and the energy and ability to do it, go for it. It's important for people to take initiative and do what they can to advance liberty. That's actually one of the things that is really important to Students for Liberty's entire model, our theory of social change being about empowerment. It's not about waiting for permission to do stuff or to get approval from the top. It's about taking the initiative and the responsibility for affecting change to do it yourself. So by all means, please go ahead and do things on your campus in order to advance these ideas. And I think that actually is a great indication that you should let the campus coordinator interviewers know that you're doing.
Absolutely. One of my favorite takeaways from the CC program was the mantra of it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. I think with student activism, that's an incredibly important rule. It can be very difficult to get things done on campus if you're waiting to get the go-ahead from someone above you, and you can really make a big difference just by following your passions and taking action. I've got a follow-up question from Raj, who says that he's in high school and trying to spread the liberty movement in high schools, and since that is the case, he has concerns that he doesn't have enough past organizing experience since he hasn't been in the college environment. Is this anything that he did participate in the high school mentorship program, and could any of this be held against him in an interview or in the CC application process?
Oh, no, Raj. Do not worry about not having the extensive experience in organizing because you're in high school. We completely understand that the high school experience is very different from a college one. In fact, what we're considering doing is launching a parallel program to the Campus Coordinator program specifically for high school students, recognizing these differences and creating a system that allows individuals like yourself to better be able to support other high school students, launch things at your school under the very different circumstances from what it's like to do this on college campuses. So in short, that will not be held against you. Just present yourself and your interest in the program as best you can, and everything should be fine.
Excellent. And he says that he has organizing experience, just not with liberty-related things, I suppose.
Oh, then that's absolutely great. Organizing experience anywhere can be transferred into being an effective organizer for liberty. And so it's great to have examples beyond libertarianism for that.
And in the same vein, for people who are concerned about the Campus Coordinator program not necessarily being applicable to their career goals, having organizing experience in anything can help you in whatever path you take in life. Well, it looks like we are out of questions from the audience unless anyone has any last notes to put in. Before we finish up, I wanted to thank the Daily Paul Radio for streaming this webinar, and thank you, Alexander, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Zoe, for moderating this. I really enjoyed it.
Y'all have a good night, and I'm glad you were able to come.
Thank you, everyone.